there and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to tell you what you can expect from a Gemini moon. Our moon sign is different from our sun sign. What the moon represents is our inner emotional world. The moon governs over the side of ourselves that feels. The moon is a side of ourself that is usually hidden from others, and this is a side of ourself that we usually only show to those that we are very close and very intimate with. Our moon sign side usually comes out when we are dealing with more emotional situations. So this is why people that we aren't very close with won't really see this side of us, because we don't really show our more complex emotional side to people that we aren't very close to. Now let's talk about a Gemini moon. If you have a Gemini moon, you are a person who is rather intelligent. However, your intelligence does go unnoticed. When you were a child, people most likely took you for granted, and people only really started to realize how clever and intelligent you really are when you became an adult. As a child and a teenager, it could have been very difficult for you to prove yourself to people and to prove how intelligent you actually are, and people would always bring down your level of intelligence for some reason. People who have a Gemini moon, once they reach the age of about 18, 19, 20 or 21, they become very confused by their thoughts and their emotions. Their thoughts and emotions confuse them so much that they never really focus on their goals and their actual potential that they hold within themselves. So a Gemini moon can be highly intelligent, and they can be highly creative and highly capable of doing something. But the problem is their emotions and their thoughts are so intertwined with each other that it is very difficult for them to make sense of one thing and to actually pursue with one specific goal. They're always feeling all these emotions, and they're always thinking about all these things. Zooming into one thing in order to grow themselves can be very tricky for them, and their attention span is highly scattered. Gemini moons become so overtaken by their thoughts and their emotions that they actually lose a sense of self. They lose a sense of knowing who they are, what they are worth, and what they're actually capable of. All the ideas that they get presented with, all the conversations that they have, all the emotions that they're so continuously feeling literally overtakes their entire perception of life, and they forget to actually think about themselves and to think about who they actually are. So very often, a person with a Gemini moon doesn't really know who they are, and they're trying really hard to find themselves. Their thoughts are so drowned out by everything else around them, they cannot really focus their thoughts inward onto themselves. Gemini moon natives are on this endless quest to discover themselves and to discover their identity and who they truly are. And they do this through engaging with many people, engaging with many different experiences, tackling many different projects at once in order for them to find some kind of sense of self. But the problem is they spread themselves way too thin, and they're never actually really going to find a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose by spreading themselves so thin and dealing with so many things at once. They do need to learn to teach themselves to zoom into one thing and only focus on that and complete that. When they, for example, focus on one thing and they complete it and they learn to master it, they're actually able to learn a lot from it. But the thing is, when they only dabble a little bit in all these different topics and all these different subjects, they never really master anything, and they never really get to a point where it's actually able to serve them something, where it's actually able to teach them something. They only deal with the basics and then they move on to something else. And unfortunately, only dealing with the basics is not going to be enough to really teach them what they need to learn, or to really get them to become who they need to become. Gemini moons can often get highly frustrated because they feel like they're doing so much and they're dealing with so many things and engaging with so many things, but it's not getting them anywhere. But the problem is, it's not getting them anywhere because they don't allow themselves to really dive deep into one thing and to master that thing. They think that dealing with so many things at once and getting involved with so many things will bring them a sense of purpose. But diving deep and getting to the core of one thing is what will actually bring them their purpose. But the thing is, unless they allow themselves to figure out one thing in its whole for what it is, completely go deep into understanding it, they are going to feel incomplete because they're only dabbling in all these things. In order to really connect with a deeper understanding, you need to go deeper into certain things, into certain subjects, into certain interests. Whatever the case may be that the Gemini moon is engaging with, they have to look deeper into it. The information that they are receiving on the surface is not enough for them to really learn what they need to learn. However, they think that it is. They think that the information they see on the surface and what they are observing with their eyes and what is right here is all they need to know, but it's not. They need to know much more. They have to go much deeper. A person with a moon in Gemini would have had a mother who had quite a dual nature. So what I mean by this is they might have had a mother who was not entirely honest with them all the time, or a mother who could have hidden things from them. Throughout their childhood, the way that things appeared to be was never the way it really was. People with the moon in Gemini really like to talk a lot. The reason why people with the moon in Gemini like to communicate and talk a lot is because they feel quite disconnected from themselves and the world around them. And the best way for them to actually feel a sense of connection to others and to the world around them is through talking, it's through communicating, it's through using their voice. This is the best way for them to establish a sense of connection and a sense of meaning within their lives. A person with a Gemini moon will have many different personalities inside themselves that they keep hidden that usually only comes out when their emotions are flared up. So when they are angry, when they're sad, when they're upset, it can almost be like you're dealing with a completely different person as to who you usually deal with. This is because a Gemini moon person does have a dual side to them in a sense where they have these other personalities that they do not really show and they do not really bring out unless they become emotional, and they can't really stop themselves from showing this side of themselves. A Gemini moon can very easily change their personality in a sense. So what I mean by that is they can change what their needs are, what their wants are, what their desires are at a snap of a finger. So you might think that a Gemini moon needs, wants, and desires this today, and then tomorrow they need, want, and desire something completely differently. And it's very confusing to keep up with what they actually want. Gemini moons have this incredibly dual nature where there's so many different personalities inside them, and each day a different personality comes out, and this specific personality has its very specific wants, needs, and desires. And then the next day you're dealing with a different personality that has different wants and needs and desires. So with the Gemini moon, it's never stable. You're never really sure what's going to happen the next day. You're never really sure what they're going to want, what mood they're going to be in, how they're going to feel, because you are in essence dealing with a different person every single day. Some Gemini moons can have 2 personalities. Some Gemini moons can have 5, some can have 10, some can even have 50. If you are a person who wants stability and consistency in your life, then being friends with or being in a relationship with a Gemini moon is probably not the best idea, because they're not the most consistent people. Their personalities and their values change all the time. Gemini moons have a very strong analytical capacity, and they're very, very intelligent. They are usually analyzing everything and everyone around them, and because they are so analytical, they're actually able to give really good advice because they've actually considered all outcomes, they've considered all avenues, they've been watching how things have played out for a while, and they can come to very good conclusions based on their observations. But even though a Gemini moon is able to, they can never guide themselves and give themselves good advice. So they never listen to their own advice. And when they're giving you advice, you can often say to them, well, why don't you listen to your own advice for a change? They actually don't listen to their advice. They don't even hear it. They're very good at giving other people advice and getting other people's lives together. But when it comes to their own lives, the advice that they have given literally goes out the back door. They never follow their own advice, and they never really apply their own advice onto themselves. Very often, a Gemini moon doesn't really know what it is that they want. They don't really know what it is that they desire, and they're consistently searching for it. This is why they're consistently engaging with so many things. The thing is, they only really know what it is they want when they put themselves in an extremely fired up emotional situation. So what I mean by this is when they are emotionally triggered, the feelings that they feel inside themselves will tell them what it is that they really want. They're only really able to understand themselves and what it is that they truly, truly desire when they allow themselves to experience extreme, intense emotions. It is at their points of emotional extremes that they're actually able to find and discover themselves. Gemini moons aren't the best at dealing with their emotions. Most air moons generally do struggle to actually process and deal with emotions. What a Gemini moon can very often do is suppress their emotions. They can suppress a specific issue that they're going through, and they can move on with their lives. They will move on months later, possibly even years later. Then all of a sudden, months later, or even years later, whatever this issue is, or whatever thought or emotion it is that they were suppressing, one of their personalities wakes up the morning and says to them, "You have to face this." And then they have to deal with it again. So very often, Gemini moons can undergo these intense situations in their life, and they literally just suppress it, and they live in denial as to what happened. And then a few months or a few years down the line, they actually deal with it and they face it when you actually least expect it. So don't be surprised if your adult Gemini moon friend suddenly becomes a little bit down and starts trying to process a specific memory that happened to them 15 years ago. It's because when it happened, they shoved it out of their mind and out of their hearts, and they didn't want to deal with it. But now they actually have to. To Gemini moons, their sense of logic and their sense of emotions are intertwined. So what I mean by this is it's difficult for them to actually separate their emotions and make a logical decision. Most of the decisions they do make and most of the things they proceed to act on is generally based on their emotions as well, as they cannot separate these two. A lot of the times you can observe a Gemini moon doing things and you can think to yourself, does this person not think? Does this person have no logic in their mind whatsoever? And to be entirely honest with you, they do think. They are logical, but the problem is they can't really see the truth. They can't really see things for what they are, because as soon as they try and think logically, their emotions overtake them. Gemini moons live life through their sense of logic and their emotions being intertwined all the time. This is why it will never make sense to you why a Gemini moon does the things they do, is because they're actually acting based on their emotions, where they might think they are being logical because they have thought it through and all those things, but actually they are still allowing their emotions to impact their decisions. Gemini moons generally like to keep things casual, and they usually don't open up regarding their personal issues and their insecurities to people, and they kind of just deal with these things on their own, in their own privacy. A Gemini moon can often put on this face of being happy, cheerful, and that everything is okay. However, underneath it all, there's a lot actually going on that they're suppressing. Gemini moons are incredibly good at communicating. They're very, very good at communicating complex topics, but one thing they suck at communicating is their emotions. A Gemini can talk your head off about all these different stories and all these different things going on that they've learned and all these interesting topics, but the moment it comes to talking about what's going on inside them, they go silent. Usually, they will try and change the topic and try and talk about something else. Gemini moons never want to talk about their emotions, but they have like verbal diarrhea when it comes to everything else in life. Gemini moons don't really allow the more emotional side of themselves to have a voice. They only really allow the more analytical side of themselves to come out and to speak, but when it comes to their emotional parts within themselves, they silence the side. They silence the emotional side within themselves. What's very interesting, like I explained, because Gemini moons have all these different personalities within themselves, they have these different personalities within themselves when it comes to their emotional desires. So they can often contradict themselves when it comes to what it is that they want, because it's a different part of their emotional side coming through that day. Tomorrow you might be dealing with another side of them that wants something completely different. So very often people get very confused with Gemini moons, and they often tell them that they chop and change too much and they're too contradictory to actually understand. A very good analogy I have for a Gemini moon is, imagine that their inner heart and their inner nature consists of a crowd of people. It is very challenging to let every single person in this crowd of people say what it wants to say and get what it wants to get. And that's why every time you're dealing with a Gemini moon, it's a different person that's in this crowd inside them that comes out. Because there's this crowd inside them, there's so many different people inside them that they need to please, that they need to deal with. A different person from this crowd inside them comes through for you to deal with whenever you deal with them. So the thing is, a Gemini moon has 100 different sides to them and 100 different personalities, and you're always dealing with a different side to their personality. This is why it's not really fair to say to a Gemini moon that they contradict themselves and that they are lying and that they are unstable and untrustworthy. It's because they literally have so many sides within themselves, they do not even know how to deal with it. Imagine if you had a crowd of people inside you. How would you deal with it? A moon in Gemini could have had parents who were highly intellectual and who likely taught them a lot. The moon in Gemini person likely looked up to their parents for what they taught them when they were young. What likely ended up happening is, when the Gemini moon was a child or when they were young, they wanted to find out something. They wanted to figure something out, but they weren't really presented with the information they needed. Maybe they asked one of their parents or one of the adult figures, and this specific person just said to them, "I'm not sure, I don't know. Who cares?" The Gemini moon really wanted to know the answer to this question, because the Gemini moon was used to the people in their life educating them and teaching them. So what could have happened is, they could have been given all this knowledge and all this access to knowledge, and they could have been taught so much, but then this access to knowledge and these teachings have just been cut off, and there's no more interest in teaching them. So then what ends up happening is, a Gemini moon takes it into their hands. They take it as their responsibility to find out everything they can. Children who have a Gemini moon tend to read very early in life. They're actually very quick readers. Some kids who have a Gemini moon can start reading at age 4 or 5. They usually are much faster learners and faster readers than other kids in their age group. Gemini moons are usually very big fans of reading, and they tend to kind of get lost in their own little world when they read a book or they read something. Gemini moons are actually people who read much more than your average person. A Gemini moon will probably enjoy picking up a book and reading it more than they actually enjoy socializing and engaging with people. Gemini moons can seem like highly social people, and they are. They love to chat and they love to communicate. But to them, it's more about the sharing of information. It's more about learning information. So if you're not going to be teaching them anything, if you're not going to be sharing information with them when you engage and converse with them, they'd rather than just read a book, because the book is actually going to teach them something. The book is actually going to broaden their awareness. Gemini moons only really want to engage with people that will broaden their awareness, that will teach them things, that will inspire them and give them insights into life. Gemini moons aren't really interested in just average boring conversations. A Gemini moon is seeking knowledge, and ways for them to gain this knowledge is through reading and through the conversations with people. Gemini moons will struggle to put their emotions into words verbally, but when they are writing, they can actually put their emotions into words in a poetic way. They can write about the emotions, even if it's not in a very direct, clear way that's understandable. They actually love to express and release their emotions through writing. Reading is also another way for them to actually emotionally release, especially if they are reading something that they're actually able to connect with emotionally. A Gemini moon is usually not a teacher's favorite, and Gemini moon kids often find themselves in trouble at school. It could either be that they're talking too much in class while the teacher is trying to teach something, or they're just not paying any attention at all and not doing their work whatsoever. Some Gemini moons actually really love school, and they actually look up to their teachers, as knowledge and learning is something they're highly passionate about, and people who teach them, they usually admire quite a bit. Gemini moons usually start out as very shy kids, and as they get older and as they get more comfortable within themselves and who they are, and they get to know themselves more, they become more self-assured. It is highly crucial for a person with a Gemini moon to receive a sense of education in their life. If they do not receive the sense of education where they can build on their sense of intelligence and logic, they do lack self-confidence. A Gemini moon's sense of self-confidence is directly linked to how much they know, how much information they've learned, how educated they are. When a Gemini moon is not educated and they haven't learned anything, they can be rather unconfident. They can be rather unself-assured. When a Gemini moon does feel unconfident and they lack personal motivation, the best thing they can actually do for themselves is to learn something. It's to educate themselves in something. Once they have gained a sense of education, they will feel much more confident with who they are. People with a Gemini moon can also possibly have a twin, or they can possibly just have twins occurring quite often in their family. Even though Gemini is a mutable sign, Gemini moons usually do not feel too comfortable and too happy with change in their lives. However, when they are faced with change, they are actually able to adapt themselves and be highly flexible to their own surprise. A Gemini moon will likely never become physically aggressive with you, or they will never do things behind your back to get back at you. But one thing a Gemini moon will do is verbally attack you when they're angry. A Gemini moon will swear at you. They'll call you all kinds of terrible names, and they'll make you feel really bad and push you down a lot with their words when they are angry at you. But what they will likely never do is hit you, or they'll likely never actually do something behind your back that will hurt you, but they will directly hurt you with their words. A Gemini moon can also be like an Aries moon in a sense, where when a Gemini moon is angry, when they're in this mood where they're verbally attacking you and they're going at you, there is very little things you can do or say to change this, and you kind of just have to wait for it to blow over. It is best to avoid arguing with them or trying to debate with them or discuss things with them, because they're not really going to see logic and reason, because like I said, their emotions and their sense of logic is intertwined. So when they're flared up, they can't see clearly, they can't see logically, and their emotions become their logic. They will tell you that they are right because they feel a specific way, and they will reason it in such a way to make it seem that their emotion is logical. However, it actually isn't, but to them it is. Gemini moons, just like Virgo moons, tend to suffer from tension, nervousness, anxiety, hyperactivity, shortness of breath, and things like stomach problems, because they do not allow themselves to actually process their emotions and they suppress it. Generally, what happens when people do not deal with their emotions, the emotion manifests itself in a physical form in their body. So it could be through a stomach cramp, it could be through anxiety, heart palpitations, it could be through a headache. These are things that Gemini moons can very often experience. Gemini moons can often struggle to sleep because they're thinking of so much and their minds are incredibly busy. Because the values and the motivations and the wants of a Gemini moon changes so rapidly based on all these different personalities that they have within themselves, it can be tricky to discern between whether the way a Gemini moon is reacting to a certain situation is just some kind of instinctive way that they're reacting within the moment, or if it actually comes from a very deep-seated space and place within them. Very often with Gemini moons, some things that they bring up don't mean anything, and it literally just needs to be shrugged under the rug and not dealt with. Some things they bring up are very, very serious and you need to deal with it or they will end up losing their minds. But the thing is, you're not really sure what they bring up is this important thing to deal with. So it can be very confusing. It's difficult for a Gemini moon to really answer a person. Let's say you ask a Gemini moon what it is that they want. They will tell you what they want right now, but 2 minutes from now, they're gonna want something else. You can ask a Gemini moon if they're okay, and they'll tell you they're perfectly fine now, but 5 minutes later, they're in a hysterical mood. Don't ever bank on what a Gemini moon is telling you now, because I'm telling you, a few minutes later, the story's gonna change again. When a Gemini moon's mood changes, it's literally like they change. Their entire being and their entire personality changes. It's not just the mood that has changed, it's the person that has changed. Gemini moons make some of the most incredible storytellers and writers. Because they have this rare ability to intertwine both logic and emotion, they're actually able to write very moving, inspiring stories and novels. Their stories and novels are very, very clear and interesting. There'll be a lot of interesting facts and just things going on in them. Then at the same time, there is a lot of emotion and meaning to it as well. Very few people know how to capture emotions, stories, and moments in words, such as what a Gemini moon can. Gemini moons have this ability to stay young and youthful throughout their entire lives. So even when they're old, they still have this sense of youthfulness to them. So just so you guys know, like I said, with a Gemini moon, their emotional side is an entire different person. Their emotional side has a life and a personality of its own. It's its own unique entity. You should actually see if you can figure out the star sign of their moon sign personality. They're on this unending quest for information, to learn and to seek knowledge, because they want to find some kind of answer as to how they can connect with themselves, how they can feel, and how they can take this other side of them, this other personality inside them, and intertwine it with who they truly are. Throughout their lives, they are aware of how split and separated they are within themselves, and they seek some kind of higher knowledge that will allow them to reconnect with themselves again. Okay, so this is my video on the moon in Gemini. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Are you a Gemini moon, and can you relate with what I've said? Also check out the link to my Patreon below if you want to become a patron of mine and if you would like to support this channel. Thanks again for watching this video, and I will see you next time.